I think we're ready to go.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Dan Stone, Chair of the Programs and Exhibits Committee of the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada in Winnipeg. Welcome to our program on the Little Synagogue on the Prairie. It's exciting to us to reach out to Calgary. This is the second program this year that we've been able to run together with Alberta. The first one was with Judy Battalion talking about her new book on Jewish women who fought in the ghetto resistance. They were talking to Beljarniewski, our executive director and head of the Holocaust education. Before I go into the program proper, let me introduce Mark Cantor, president of the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada, to say a few words about our organization. And please remember to keep your computers muted. Mark?
Thanks, Dan. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon's program, the Little Synagogue on the Prairies. The Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada is the umbrella organization for the Marian and Ed Vicker Jewish Museum, the Freeman Family Foundation Holocaust Education Center, the Genealogical Institute, and the Jewish Historical Society Archives. Our archives is the principal repository of the history of our Jewish community. It is a major destination for academics and the general public. Its resources have been used for publications, lectures, school projects, exhibits, conferences, and workshops. The Jewish Heritage Center preserves and promotes our Jewish history, and our vision is to forge a pathway to the future by educating the present and future generations. Before I send you back to Dan, I would like to acknowledge that the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada is located on ancestral lands on Treaty 1 territory. The Red River Valley is also the birthplace of the Métis. We acknowledge the water in the museum is sourced from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation. Dan?
Dan, you're muted.
Dan, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. I ran into a technical glitch for a second trying to find the mute button, which seems to have disappeared. Mark's indicated what the Jewish Heritage Center does, and I'd like to remind you that donations are very welcome to help us deliver programs like this without charge and many other important activities. Please go to our website, jhcwc.org, Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada.org, and click on the donation link. I keep on saying the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada. Winnipeggers are probably used to that, but Bulgarians may be surprised to hear our title. A bit of history is involved here. The Jewish Historical Society of Western Canada was formed in 1967-68 as a centenary project. At that time, Calgary had 2,881 Jews, that's the census of 1961, and Winnipeg had 14,790. Winnipeg had been somewhat bigger before that, so we were really used to a considerable imbalance. And so Winnipeg was the dominant place in Western Canada. Now in 2011, Calgary was up to 8335, Winnipeg down to 13,690. 2021, the census, undoubtedly we'll see the two cities much closer. So we have this title that's over 50 years old, and we're used to it. We hope it doesn't bother anybody. It's a big nuisance to change our corporate title. And so we're very, very happy to reach out and to develop closer relations with the sizable communities that are further west from Winnipeg that used to be very small, but are now very considerable. A silver lining in the pandemic is virtual meetings like this one. I said it's our second program with Alberta. Bell talked to Judy Battalion out of Edmonton, but also linked with Calgary not too long ago, and we hope that this will continue. The order of the program for today is that in a moment, Bob Pearson from Calgary will tell us a bit and introduce our principal speaker, Irena Karshenbaum. She'll talk and show her slideshow. After that, there'll be time for question and answers. Please use the chat line on most computers. It's at the bottom of your screen, and send us a question at any time. I'll keep an eye on the chat line the whole time, so I can pass the questions on to Irena at the end. Now, Bob Pearson, who was next up, is the manager of interpretation at the Heritage Park Historical Village in Calgary. He holds a MA in Canadian history from the University of Calgary and has worked in museums and historic sites all over Alberta for more than 30 years. Bob, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to start then with a brief land acknowledgement from Calgary here on behalf of the Little Synagogue on the Prairie and Heritage Park. And we acknowledge in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and reciprocity that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda nations, as well as the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. We further acknowledge all peoples who make their home in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. So it's an honor then to introduce Irena Karshenbaum, who is a longtime volunteer here at Heritage Park, definitely one of the family. And because this, I don't want to make the introduction as long as the actual presentation, though it could very well be. So Irena was born in Kharkov, Ukraine, and has lived in Calgary for, and she says how many years, but I'm not going to walk into that trap, but has lived in Calgary for a good many years. Is best known around here at Heritage Park as the founder and president of the Little Synagogue on the Prairie Society that, along with Irena and about 60 other volunteers, gifted one of the last surviving synagogues to Heritage Park here. And it opened here in 2009. The story you're going to hear, of course, I don't want to steal her thunder, but goes back a long way before that. And so she raised over $1.1 million for this project. When the synagogue opened, there was a huge, monstrous celebration. By the way, in the spirit of the synagogue, because these people, when it was originally a synagogue on the prairie, loved to party. And there was a party that was attended by over 2,000 people. It has since become one of Heritage Park's most popular exhibits, and we're going to hear a lot more about that later on. But Irena does more than that. She also organizes events, cultural events throughout Calgary, writes on history, heritage, and has recently turned her attention to fiction and writing fiction. She just completed her first novel, Gershon's Kiss. And with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, since you didn't come here to hear me, you came here to hear Irena, I'd like to introduce and for you to make welcome Irena Karshenbaum.
Thank you very much, Bob, for that very kind introduction. I need to do a screen share, excuse me. One second.
Well, Irena works that out. Let me say that after Irena speaks, I forgot to mention that Bob will also say a few words about the Heritage Park and the place of the Little Synagogue within the Calgary Heritage Park.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Daniel. And thank you, Bob, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm thrilled to be here and thrilled to see so many of you here, my cousins, dear friends from all over North America, colleagues, my friends through the Little Synagogue. Thank you so much for taking the time during this beautiful day to zoom into this presentation. I would like to begin by today by thanking the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada for allowing me to share the Little Synagogue on the Prairie Project story with your audiences. It's a tremendous opportunity. I'm especially grateful for the opportunity to meet and work with your extremely professional Executive Director, Belle Jarnowski, and your Director of Programs and Exhibits, Stan Carbone, and your thoughtful, immediate past president and current chair of the Programs and Exhibits Committee, Dr. Daniel Stone, who just spoke. Belle, Stan, Daniel, I have enjoyed our meeting so very much, or our meetings in preparing for this presentation. They gave me a wonderful insight into how the Jewish Heritage Center works, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity to learn, as well as to form our friendships across the prairies. Thank you for your generosity of time and your investment of expertise and resources into preparing for this event. Thank you to President Mark Cantor for your leadership of this fine organization that does so much to preserve and tell Jewish history to Jewish and non-Jewish audiences. At this difficult time in history that we are living through, your vision, care, and advocacy for the work of the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada is that much more important. I also would like to thank Heritage Park Interpretation Manager Bob Pearson and let all of you know what a pleasure it is to work with him. He puts his heart into his work and manages the Little Synagogue exhibit and our team of interpreters with great sensitivity and care. We are lucky to be under his wing. Thank you to all of you for Zooming in today. I feel honored that you have taken your time to be here. And with that, I would like to move on to my first slide. I would like to dedicate today's presentation to Bobby Libin. Today is his 65th birthday. And without Bobby, Bobby is our first major donor. His extremely generous gift to the Little Synagogue on the Prairie Project helped get us off the ground and help bring in other major donors, as well as other donors on board that helped bring the Little Synagogue and really change the course of telling the Jewish history story to so many audiences. So happy birthday, Bobby. Thank you for being here. And this talk is dedicated to you. I will break down my presentation into 3 parts. I will speak about the Jewish history a little bit. I will talk about the Little Synagogue on the Prairie Project, how it came to Heritage Park, and I will speak and I will give a tour of the Montefiore Institute, the Little Synagogue inside the building, so all of you can see what the building is like inside before turning the presentation over to Bob Pearson. So while we're on the subject of generosity and philanthropy, this is an old photograph of Baron Maurice de Hirsch. He was actually born Moritz von Hirsch in Bavaria. And he had a profound impact on how things turned out for the Jewish people. He was born into considerable wealth, but he created great wealth in his lifetime. He built the train, what do you call it? Train railway from Europe to the Ottoman Empire. And while he was working in the Ottoman Empire, he saw how Middle Eastern Jews were suffering, how they were oppressed. And through his work, he gained tremendous wealth. And he also decided that he needed to help his fellow Jews. I mean, we all have that mentality as Jews that we are all responsible for each other. And so he decided that the way to fight anti-Semitism was that we need to bring Jews back to the land. We need to get them away from the professions Jews were known for, money lenders, and that we need to get Jews into a noble profession like farming, get them back to the land. And he started to sponsor settlements in Argentina, Brazil, US, and Canada through the Jewish Colonization Association, which he founded in 1891. He was also doing philanthropic work beforehand, but it was really through the founding of this organization that he helped finance mass migration of Jews from Russia, who were oppressed, who were constantly living through pogroms, and he financed a massive movement of people through his philanthropic work. He passed away fairly young at the age of 64 in 1896. And through his philanthropy, so Jews started to come to Argentina, to Brazil, and they came to the Canadian prairies. What's interesting is you would think that the oldest Jewish settlements should be in Manitoba because they're the ones that are closest east. But actually, what we have in our research is the oldest Jewish farming settlement was in Moosomin, which was known as New Jerusalem in Saskatchewan. And there was some hesitation by the Prime Minister at the time. He didn't want Jews coming to Canada, but they eventually found some land in Saskatchewan and Jews started to come. They started to settle the prairies. And these are just some of the settlements that populated the Canadian prairies. There was a settlement, Bender Hamlet or Narcisse in Manitoba, New Hirsch, that was started as late as 1911 in Manitoba. What's interesting, if you look at, there was a settlement, Roser, in Roser, that was started as late as 1934. That's quite remarkable because most Jews, the Jewish farming experience was really a one-generation experience, if that, sometimes even a half a generation experience. And so there was a colony that was founded as late as 1934, and it would be interesting to go further into that colony because it was also after the rise of Hitler in Germany, and also after Canada imposed significant immigration restrictions on Jews coming into Canada. Alberta had a number of Jewish farming colonies. There was a colony at Pine Lake that survived for a very short period of time. It was founded in 1892. It only survived for about 3 years before the colonists abandoned the colony there. And of course, there was a colony at Montefiore Colony, which is our colony where the Montefiore Institute was built. So the Montefiore Colony was founded in 1910 by Bill Manison and Louis Schachter. And here is a later photo of Bill Manelson from the 1930s. He looks fabulous in his chaps. And there's some statistics that were put out by the Jewish Colonization Association. The colony peaked around 1920 with a population of 77 people. And these are some of the names of the families who lived on the colony. So you can have a look at that and see if there are any familiar names to you, and some names that perhaps might be your ancestors, your family members, or you know these people, they are your friends. So it was a very active colony. It had a vibrant life, and they were engaged in the greater community. One of the colonists, F. Ullman, enlisted in the war effort in World War I. There was a Montefiore Jewish Ladies Aid Society, and they raised funds for the war effort that they sent to Europe. The farmers participated in the United Farmers of Alberta and formed their own Jewish farming cooperative. And there is a photograph of Max Berkovich driving a very large team of horses. So the colony was founded in 1910, and it kept growing. And by 1916, the colonists decided that they needed a synagogue. And so they built this building. This is actually the only photograph of the building that exists, that survives. There is no other photograph, and there is no photograph of the interior of the synagogue. And you could see that it's a later photograph because the window is boarded up. It was built on 3 acres of land that was donated by a family of colonists, Joseph and Fega Chetterenner. Later, the family shortened the name to Chetner. And they are actually on this call this afternoon. And it was built, those are the locations that you see, and it was close to the Saskatchewan border. The town of Alsace, Saskatchewan was nearby. They brought lumber from the town, and they completed the synagogue in the summer of 1916. The Star of David, you could see the metal Star of David. It was built by Israel Chetner, or he might have been Israel Chetner at the time. And I'm going to read to you a couple of articles that were published in the Oyen News. One was from August 9th, 1916. And this is a notice inviting participants to the opening ceremony of the Montefiore Institute on the Northwest, and it gives the location. Rabbi Dr. Herbert J. Sandheim, BA of Winnipeg, on Thursday, August 14th at 2 p.m. sharp. The committee will cordially welcome the presence of all neighbors, more particularly our Christian friends. Dr. Herbert J. Sandheim is an English rabbi and will conduct the ceremony and deliver the address in English. Arrangements are being made to have Professor Rutford deliver an address. Refreshments and dance will be given free of charge at close of the meeting. On behalf of the committee, Louis Novikov, President, Harry Oretsky, Secretary Treasurer. That was the notice. And then there is a second article, also from the Oyen News from August 20th. And the newspaper article writes, one of the largest and most enjoyable gatherings that has taken place in this little locality for some time was that which assembled on the afternoon and evening of the 17th inst, the occasion being the dedication of the Montefiore Institute building. As early as 2 p.m., the people commenced to gather, and from then on until 4 the next morning, the place was the scene of feasting and merrymaking. Unfortunately, the English rabbi of Winnipeg, who was to master the ceremonies, was unable to be present, owing to an illness. And the story continues about the festivities. So it was a fabulous event. The Montefiore Institute was, of course, named in honor of Sir Moses Montefiore. Many of you know him. He was born in Livorno, Italy, while his parents were on a trip there. And he did so well as an investment banker that he retired at the age of 40 and spent the next 61 years of his life devoting his life to philanthropy. He traveled the world to save Jews who were in need, who were being oppressed. And as a result, he became a mythical figure. He passed away in England in 1885. And so if you consider that the Montefiore Institute, our Montefiore Institute, the Little Synagogue, was built in 1916, it was built 31 years after he passed away. It is a tribute to his greatness, what a great man he was in his time. That he had passed away so far before, and the synagogue was named in his memory. So the Montefiore Institute, it was, as I was mentioning, it was built in 1916 at a cost of $1,500, and $300 of it was financed by the Jewish Colonization Association, and the rest through generous giving by community members, which is quite a remarkable thing because they had nothing. They lived in poverty, and yet they managed to raise, which was a great sum of money for that time. And the synagogue, of course, served as all synagogues do. It was a synagogue, it was a school, which is a Heder, a community center, it had a library, and for a time it was even a quarantine hospital during the Spanish influenza of 1918. The colony didn't last for very long. The farming conditions were terrible. And in fact, and the building was, the colony was abandoned by the mid-1920s, which actually was the case with quite a lot of not only Jewish farming colonies, but a lot of other colonies were abandoned on the prairies because of the economic hardship in the 1920s. And people moved to the larger towns. And this also pertained to the Montefiore Colony. The homesteaders, they moved to Calgary, they moved to Edmonton, they moved to Southern California, where they became chicken farmers. There's a photograph of the Montefiore Hebrew Club of Los Angeles from the late 1930s. The Montefiore Institute, it was empty, it stood empty. It was used to store grain, and around 1940, it was moved to the town of Hanna, where it became a family home. So now I will move on. We'll bring the talk over 65 years into the future and talk about the Little Synagogue on the Prairie Project. I started the project in late 2005, and I started by writing this proposal. And it was a proposal that I was writing to send to Heritage Park. And the proposal, it was really a case for why there should be a synagogue at Heritage Park. There was a church there. They had recently put in place a Catholic mission. And I started to make a case of writing about the Jewish history on the Canadian prairies in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta. I gave a precedent that there was a mosque, the oldest mosque that was built in Canada was actually moved in the 1990s to Fort Edmonton Park, the equivalent park in Edmonton, the equivalent of what is Heritage Park in Edmonton. And as well, this proposal contained 3 options of what we should be doing. One of the options was to build a scaled down version of the old House of Jacob synagogue, which is the oldest synagogue in Calgary. One of the options was to build a replica of the Montefiore Institute, because Calgary historian Jack Switzer, he had done some research, as well as some other historians, that about the Montefiore Colony, about the Montefiore Institute. And so I put in my proposal that he included in his article the measurements of the building. And I put in the proposal that we can build a replica of the old Montefiore Colony. And another option was, I think, to move the rabbi's house from Lethbridge. And I really did not like the idea of moving a building. I thought it was too difficult. It was, the idea was ludicrous to move a building. And I think the recommendation I made was build a replica of the old Montefiore Institute at Heritage Park. It took me 7 months to write this proposal. I consulted with some people and brought on board some very important volunteers, many of whom stayed with the project. I will speak about them shortly. I emailed the proposal in June of 2006, and we had to wait 3 months for Heritage Park Board of Directors. They didn't meet over the summer, for them to meet. And in September of 2006, I received a call followed by a letter letting me know that the Board of Directors of Heritage Park unanimously approved this project and thought it was a wonderful idea and an idea whose time had come. The Little Synagogue on the Prairie Project Society, we had no paid staff. We did the project entirely. It was entirely volunteer run. I have lost my screen. Can you hear me still? Belle?
Yes,
I can hear you.
We can hear you, yes.
but
There's no
can't,
more screen.
can hear you, but can't see you.
I can see you.
You can see me, there's no more screen.
I can see you, Irena. I just see a blank screen.
The screen is gone. Here it is.
Irena, I will try and share my screen. Oh, there you are. You're back.
Okay, I'm back. I'm so sorry. So we were entirely volunteer run. We had paid contractors. The cost of the project initially was $1 million. It ended up, we were a little bit over budget. It ended up being $1.1 million. So here's how we did it. It's all because of our people that were involved. We got tremendous group of people involved. I saw on the call here Trudy Cowan, who stepped up and served as our vice president. And Trudy had a tremendous resume of working in museums and in heritage prior to joining the project. Shauna Switzer is an accountant. Leslie Levant had a background in education and library sciences. Shel Berkovich has had his roots from the Montefiore Colony. Emmanuel Cohen, he grew up on a ranch nearby, and he was the one who actually found the building. Every project needs a lawyer. We had that with Daryl Fridhandler. Dr. Ralph Gurovich, who did a lot of work in terms of hospitality, along with his wife, Sheila Gurovich, who's on this call. Jack Switzer, who is the Jewish community's historian, and Betty Weiss, who was had a background, who was the constituent secretary to the premier of the province at the time. And we had all of these committees. So we had extremely capable, talented people working on the project. So this was our vision, this is the location at the park that was allocated for the project, and actually Trudy Cowan did this wonderful photograph. And so the project was approved in September of 2006, and very soon after, Emmanuel Cohen, and he actually very sadly passed away in September of last year. He was the one who actually found the building in Hannah, and this is what it looked like. And people would sometimes say, well, how do you know you found the right building? You bought the right building. We bought the building in April of 2007, and we had a very long possession date of 14 months. We took, in the last few months before the possession date, the siding was removed, and then this was the defining moment when we knew we bought the right building. This should say it all. So there is the cutout for the Magen David. Once we saw that, we knew we bought the right building. This was in early June of 2008. We took possession of it, and actually we only bought the building. We did not buy the land around it. We did not buy the foundation that the building stood on. We only bought the building. The photograph on the upper left-hand side is a photograph of the day we had the moving crew go out into Hannah, Alberta. They came out early in the morning. They put large wooden beams. They slid it under the building. They rolled the beams, and the building slowly ripped off the foundation, and it slowly moved on to the moving truck bed. This took about 6 hours. And the photograph you see there, that's us on moving day. It was late in the afternoon. On the left is Shel Berkovich, Trudy Cowan, the vice president, Emmanuel Cohen, who found the building, myself, and Betty Weiss. And the bottom photograph is the Montefiore Institute being driven out of Hannah. And I just love that photograph. It's a beautiful photograph. As we were, the building came to a feedlot it was called Namaka Farms, east of Calgary, and it stood there. It was stored there for about 5 months, where it underwent exterior restoration work. And while that was happening, of course, Trudy Cowan, who headed up the interpretation committee, they were busy at work selecting artifacts, developing the furnishings plan, we received a tremendous amount of media attention, not only in Calgary. This is the Jewish Free Press in Calgary, that's the Calgary Herald, but really across the country. We were in articles in the Winnipeg Jewish newspaper, in Vancouver, in Toronto. We even made it into an article in the Jerusalem Post. So the reason we couldn't bring the synagogue into Heritage Park when we took possession of it is because it was in June. And Heritage Park is open in the summertime, and you can't bring a building into the park while the park is open and have there be construction all around it. So we had to bring it to a farm. And this is what the building looked like at the end of November, when the time had come to bring the building into Heritage Park. The move took 2 days to achieve it. It left Namaka Farms, it traveled down the highway, and then it couldn't be brought into the city in the middle of the day. It had to wait on, we left it at the corner of a farm, left it there over the day, and came back in the middle of the night and moved the building through the city in the middle of the night, because also you can't move a building through a city in the middle of the day. It will cause traffic. So, and here it is. This is a wonderful photograph by Shel Berkovich. This is a terrific photograph of the Montefiore Institute heading down the highway. And we brought it to Heritage Park early in the morning. We had to wait a little bit, and then this is a photograph about 7 o'clock in the morning that the Little Synagogue is being driven into the park. And the photograph below is it's driven into the park to its location. The foundation was built. It was built by Homes by Avi in Calgary. And you see it is being slid onto the foundation, its final destination. And I always say that this is the most moved synagogue in the world. It's been moved 5 times. And this is its final home, hopefully. And this is what it looked like just as it's being slid onto the foundation. And the happy synagogue chasers, the Meshuggah synagogue chasers, as I like to say, Trudy Cowan, Jack Switzer, the historian, he has passed away, his wife, Shauna Switzer, the treasurer, and Betty Weiss on that photograph. And this is what the synagogue looked like on grand opening day. This is the Victoria Day long weekend, and it is just open, and that's what it looks like, shiny, new, beautiful. And this is grand opening day. I chaired the grand opening committee, and people were telling me, we're gonna get 600 people, maybe 800 people. And I kept saying, no, 1,000 people are gonna come to the grand opening. And if you read my article in the Jewish Post and News, I referenced it in that they stopped counting at 2,000 people. They had counters at the gates. They stopped at 2,000 people. We gave the honor of, we had a Torah procession, and we gave the honor of carrying the Torah under the chuppah to our 5 major donors. The one that is pictured there is Avi Amir of Homes by Avi, who built the foundation. I see Bobby Libin, and there's Arlene Chetner, on whose family's farm the Montefiore Institute was originally built in 1916. She has her hands up. She is a happy, happy lady. You know, the wide lens of the cameras were not wide enough to capture the number of people who came. There was a sea of people. These photographs don't do the guest justice of how many people were there. And here we are. The sea of people are in front of us, and this is the board of directors on the front row, and the dignitaries on the porch, with Sam Switzer, the late Sam Switzer, who ended up being our biggest private donor holding the Torah. Stephen Singer, another major donor. Sadly, he's passed away. The Lieutenant Governor of Alberta, Norman Kwong, he has since passed away. Behind him is Mayor Bron Kanye of Calgary. Alison Redford, who would become premier in a few years. We had an amazing turnout of dignitaries as well as guests. And this is what the stage looked like, and the sea of people watching the grand opening celebration. The children were singing, There was a seniors choir singing. It was really the most beautiful event of my life. So let's do a little tour of the Montefiore Institute. I usually don't do such an extensive tour of the building because I always tell people to please come visit the Little Synagogue at Heritage Park. But given that this is to Winnipeg audiences with people from all over North America, you can't quite be there just yet, but I hope eventually all of you will come to Calgary and will come to Heritage Park and will visit the Little Synagogue. So we'll have Bob Pearson open the door for us. There he is opening the door. You can't really see, but there is a mezuzah that was carved, and it was carved by the late Lou Faber, and the scroll was donated by Chabad Lubavitch of Alberta. So when you come into the Montefiore Institute, this is what it looks like. In front of you is the sanctuary. To the left is the school and the place that was used as a kitchen. We'll come back to it later, but this is what you see originally. To the right, there is a basket with kippah, or the head covering for the men. And that begins a conversation about what this is, and it begins a conversation about some customs in Judaism. To the left, you see there is a photograph of Theodore Herzl, and that is because according to oral histories, the colonists, they were Zionists, and they had a photograph of Theodore Herzl. And again, that begins a conversation about recent Jewish history. So let's go into the sanctuary. Let's get a closer look. This is what it looks like. It was, the colonists, of course, were Orthodox, as most Jews were from Russia and Eastern Europe. And in fact, that's where they all came from. They were Orthodox, but they did not have a mahitza, the divider. According to oral history, we had the men sat in the middle and the women sat around. So the benches and the bima, they were built by volunteers. The late, I am very sorry, it was built by
David Eichelson.
Thank you very much. David Eichelson and Hal Jaffe. My apologies. And the tree that was used for the wood that was donated by a Mennonite farmer. There is a pot-bellied stove that was from a collection of Heritage Park, and so many people ask the question about the pot-bellied stove. That's tremendous. It's a great curiosity. And let's move a little bit closer to the focal point, to here. This is the Torah Arc, and the Torah Arc is where you would place a Torah, and a later slide will show what it actually looks like. It's currently covered by a parochet, the Torah curtain, which was sewn by volunteers. And there is the, I am sorry, we are, so it was donated by Cyril Leonoff of Vancouver. And I'm sorry, the Torah Arc pediment with the lions, the crown, and the Decalogue. It's circa about 1900. And it's in the folk art tradition. And it was donated by Cyril Leonoff from Vancouver. Originally, it came from the Romanische Schule, the Romanian synagogue in Winnipeg. And it was also known as the Romanian B'nai Abraham Synagogue. It was located to to all of the Winnipeggers on this presentation at 46 Charles Street, and it was owned by the Romanian Hebrew Sikh Benefit Society. The name was eventually changed to Knesset Israel Synagogue in 1917. When the pediment was donated to the project, the hind legs were missing, and they were replaced by another community volunteer who worked on the project, David Kramer. And there's Nair Tamid, and we'll get a closer look at another slide. So this, and then you see there is a small Torah, a small replica Torah that we use to talk about the Torah. We don't take out the original Torah. Here is a close-up of the Arc pediment and the Nair Tamid. And the Nair Tamid that was, I mean, the colonists didn't have a lot of money. It was poor, so they likely would have made something like this. Okay, so we move on to the next slide. Here is another, here is a close-up. The wooden menorah was carved by Lou Faber, the late Lou Faber. And on the right-hand side, you will see these cloth things, and we use those things as part of the activities for the children to show how challah is braided, for challah braiding. It's one of the activities that we have. Here is a close-up of the Aron Kodesh, the Torah Arc. It was originally from the Beth Jacob Synagogue in the Sonnenfeld Colony in Saskatchewan. The Torah Arc was built by a local carpenter. His name was Solomon Sack, and it was built around 1927, 1928. And it was donated by the Froelich family of Edmonton by Sam Froelich, who grew up in the Sonnenfeld farming colony. They read about the project, and they donated this Torah Arc to the project. I can read a translation thanks to one of the guests, Hanit Sur Jacobs. Who's a native Hebrew speaker. It says Shnat Tarpach. Shnat is from the word Shana, meaning year, and Tarpach is the letters Taf, Resh, Pei, and the last letter is Chet, meaning the year 5688, which represents the year 1928, which matches our historical dating that this Torah Arc was built 1927, 1928. So in fact, that is the case. So here is another close-up of the parochet. This is a replica. All of the textiles that are in the synagogue, they were built by volunteers. The ladies from Rimon, Calgary, the local chapter of the International Pomegranate Guild of Judaic Needlework. The original parochet was made by the mother of the maker of the Torah Arc. Her name was Malka Sack, and it is held in the collection of the Glenbow Museum in Calgary, which is the main museum, the largest museum in Calgary. This parochet was designed and created by Trudy Cowan and Marilyn Samuels. The Torah mantle, it's velvet, gold ribbon, cotton lined, and it's designed and made by Carolyn Devons, another volunteer. The Torah is on a long-term loan from Beth Tzedek Congregation in Calgary, and it is the oldest item at Heritage Park. We had a sofer look at it, and he determined that it's about 250, 275 years old. And it's from Czechoslovakia, and it is written in a Kabbalistic script, a rare script, and it has over certain letters, they're called tagim, or ornamental crowns over certain letters. And it's thanks to these tagim that the sofer was able to date the Torah and date its location. There is a yad, a pointer that you could see there, and a feather. And the feather, we use that feather to talk about how a Torah scroll is written. Here is another close-up. This is actually on another wall. And this is the Shabbat display that we have. And all of these things, they lead to a conversation about Judaism, because most of the people who come into the synagogue are not Jewish, and they've never been inside a synagogue. So we have brass candlesticks. They were donated by the late Ida Eichler. Her families that were prior to 1920s. There's a Kiddush cup. There is a challah cover. It's linen, it's cross-stitched, embroidery. It was designed and made by another Rimon Calgary volunteer, Gay Libben. And under the challah, there's the challah recipe cards that are very popular to be given away. And under the challah cover are 2 rubber challahs. This is one of the bookcases, and what's in the bookcase, there is a pushka box, there is a spice box, and an old book written. I would assume it's Hebrew. I can read the Russian. The Russian says Mazor. This display also has likely the only item that survived from the original synagogue. It was an old shofar, Israel Chetner's shofar that came to the synagogue from the Beth Tzedek collection. One of the shofars is an original. Because when the colony was abandoned, all the participants, all the colonists, they took away all the things that were inside the synagogue with them. This is the other room. This is the Heder, the school. This is me in costume. This room was also used when the colonists would have some kind of an event, and they would come and they would bring their food. So they would use this room to put out the food. And also this room was used to teach Yiddish and Hebrew. And a little bit to the right of the blackboard is the photograph that you see on your right. And it is the donor board of the project, of all the donors to the project. We really talked a lot about whether or not we should have a donor board, because Heritage Park didn't really like to have a donor board, but we decided that actually this was historically appropriate. Synagogues have donor boards, so based on this, we have a donor board inside the synagogue. Here's another view of the Heder, and this is a photograph of a PJ library program that was held almost 2 years ago, and someone wrote me a very nice note, shalom, when I was volunteering there. Some sweet little girl wrote me that. We've had some fabulous visitors. I think I'm running short on time. Oh, I am. This is Simcha Yakobovici. I'm probably not pronouncing his name correctly. The naked archaeologist. He came to the synagogue. Students from Israel visiting the Montefiore Institute. And as I was saying, most of the people who come into the synagogue, they have never been inside a synagogue. These are some actually Muslim visitors on the right. And the family on the left is from Tehran, from Iran. the synagogue sparks a lot of conversations about Judaism, and of course, a lot of that. I always begin the conversation as, have you been inside a synagogue before? And I talk about some of the elements that are common to all synagogues: the bima, the Aron Kodesh, the Torah, the Arc pediment, the Ner Tamid, and those items bring of huge interest to the people who visit synagogue. We have wonderful ongoing programming like challah braiding. We have storytelling by Trudy Cowan. We had singing by Rebecca Levant. She unfortunately passed away. We have crafts on Hanukkah, like flip the latke on the frying pan, coloring. It's a fun place for children. They love it. It's actually, the Little Synagogue is actually one of the most popular exhibits at the park. We've had special events for the 100th anniversary of the Montefiore Institute in 1916. And we had special events for the 10th anniversary of the Little Synagogue being at Heritage Park in 2019. This is a photograph of a concert that we had inside the building, a klezmer concert. It was fabulous. Here is a photograph on the left of a sofer who was visiting the Montefiore Institute in 2012, almost 9 years ago. And the photo on the right is we participated in a Dominion Day parade. There is Bobby Little, Arlene Sugar, and Avi Amir, and a friend, Minnie Siegel. Children from the students of Halpern Akiva Academy in Calgary, Rabbi Halpern talking to the children about how a Torah scroll is written, but this is rare. Most of the people who come inside this Little Synagogue are not Jewish, but it's a tremendous place of pride for the Jewish community. And I'd like to say the secret of our success is because of our talented, dedicated volunteers working together. And of course, the support that we have received from Heritage Park, so professional, sensitive, warm. It is a fabulous place to be. And with that, I will turn it over. I'm sorry, I took a little bit more time than I was supposed to. I will turn this over to Bob Pearson. Bob, you have to unmute yourself.
Unmute.
There we go. I think I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay. All right. Great. So yeah, from Irena's talk there, I think you get the idea that the Little Synagogue has become a really, really important part of Heritage Park, and one of the most popular exhibits for sure. And I always joke, that to the volunteers and staff, I say, yeah, but your reason for that, of course, is that you're just on the way to the midway, right? But no, actually, that's not it at all. So Irena kind of touched on a lot of the programs that have been done, and I should stress that those programs have been designed and implemented by staff and volunteers who come mostly from the original Little Synagogue on the Prairie Society. For example, one of the main programs that Irena touched on was storytelling. And of course, Trudy Cowan, who I know is on this call, used to play the part of Mrs. Ullman. And so on Saturdays, alternate Saturdays in the summer, people could come and have a visit with her. Trudy also, of course, wrote a book about the Little Synagogue called Quarantine Keep Out. And it, of course, tells the story of when the Little Synagogue was a quarantine hospital during the influenza pandemic of 1918, 19, and 20. And not to sort of make a plug here, but I'm going to do it anyway. So for Historic Calgary Week, we're going to try, depending on circumstances, and with this pandemic, we're going to try and do a reading of that book here at Heritage Park. So if you're a Calgarian and if you want to attend a Historic Calgary Week presentation, it'll be a fabulous one there, and you can actually pick up a copy of the book. So it'll be on the Historic Calgary Week website when that is in fact up and running. So there you go. There's my advertising. And I'm not paying 1 cent for that advertising. So there you go. But it'll be here at Heritage Park. All of these programs, when Irena was talking about the one on how a Torah scroll is made, that was actually, we had a Sofar come here to the and talk about how a Torah is made. And Leslie Levant, dedicated person who has been both staff and volunteer since the beginning, with his help, actually designed a program that is an ongoing. The one that we had with the Sofar, of course, was a special event, but she's got this ongoing program now on how a Torah scroll is made. Also, of course, the Friday program we have on the challah, and Lila Midlarski, who's actually down in the synagogue this afternoon as we speak. Shouldn't say in, because during this pandemic, we actually have all our interpreters outdoors. So she's on the front porch of the synagogue talking about the Cheder are able to do a little bit of that outdoors as well. So hopefully when we move back inside, she'll be doing that indoors. We have storytelling, and we have other, not just Trudy's book, but we have another one as well, which was done by Jacqueline Mills. And it is actually a children's telling of the Little Synagogue on the Prairie story. It's a fabulous teaching tool for us. And I think, is something that she wrote for her, I believe it was her grandchildren, but of course is one of those things that is, again, something that, is a testament to the synagogue. And that was actually kind of fun because with her, we went in there and we took a bunch of pictures, and I think there's actually a picture of me as a rabbi of all things. Anyway, but it's a fabulous little book too. And so all this dedication on the part of the staff and volunteers, of which there are many. And we also have some new volunteers and staff as well who have come, who are of course Jewish, and who are developing new programs to replace some of those that were done by people who have either since passed on or moved on over the years, because of course this now has almost a generational thing here at Heritage Park. It is one of the nicest buildings in the park in which to work too. I mean, it's got its own back room there for the staff. It's got washrooms. It's got a basement. It's got a modern furnace. So if you come to the synagogue as a visitor, you can visit in modern comfort. You can visit. You can work there in relative comfort too. People that work in it say it's one of the nicest buildings in the park to work in. So absolutely one of the best and most interesting, and as I said, one of the most important exhibits we have here in the park for sure. And certainly an example of the kind of community participation that is necessary in bringing something like this to life. And one of the things I don't think you mentioned, Irena, was the original floor. I should tell you too that the people at Heritage Park take very good care of the synagogue. And one of the things that the housekeeping people always make sure that they do every year is polish and buff that original floor, because that is in fact the original floor from the synagogue. And so the staff and volunteers are very caring of that. And so I should tell you, for all of those who are concerned about that on the call this afternoon, that was recently done. So when the synagogue is reopened, when the restrictions are lifted, then that floor will be bright and shiny and just like new for you once again.
Bob, it's not possible to mention everything. It's
I know.
Hard.
Don't I know it?
This is a gift that just keeps on giving. There's so many ways to talk about the Little Synagogue, and so many different ways to tell the story.
Yep. Well, you talked about the party that went on until 4 o'clock in the morning. We could do that here, Do you want to do that now? 10 more hours?
We're all dying for a party now.
I'm game to do that if you are.
Absolutely.
I don't know if these people want to sit with us and listen to us talk for 10 more hours, but anyway, regardless.
Well, maybe we can ask people if they had questions.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. As I said, I could talk all day and still say nothing that people wanted to hear, but you never know. All right. So I'll turn it over for questions if anybody has any for Irena or something.
Thank you very much, Bob, and thank you very much, Irena, for this wonderful presentation of a fascinating institution. I hope I can travel sometime soon and come see it in Calgary. there was one question that came in very early from Diane Kirby, which is,
Okay.
why were the colonies so short-lived? Why did the farmers give up so soon?
Maybe it wasn't so soon if you looked at it from their perspective. The farming conditions were terrible. It was bitterly cold in the winter time. It was hot in the summertime. It was dry. They lived in terrible conditions. They almost went hungry. They tried for half a generation, and then they couldn't make a go of it. And this particular colony, I didn't mention, it was built in the Palliser Triangle, where they actually they had land surveyors who sent back messages to the Canadian government as, don't settle people here. Nothing can grow here. Nothing will grow here. And the Canadian government did not listen, and they sent people here.
If I can supplement that a little bit, there's been a lot of, as an old history teacher, there's been a lot written on this subject, sometimes saying the farmers weren't very good, but more recently saying the farmers were fine. If you look at the non-Jewish farmers, they went broke just as much. And then there's some special problems for the Jewish colonies. You needed the institutional setup by the Canadian government prevented people from living close together. So it was very difficult to have a Jewish life. It was hard to get to synagogue. It was hard to maintain the institutions, and that slowed down. That made it very difficult for the colonies and made them give up more quickly than they otherwise might. But there's a lot of subject written on it. Jacques Lair, recently retired professor from the University of Winnipeg, wrote on the Rosser Colony that you mentioned. And we were on a tour of it not a couple of years ago, co-sponsored by the Manitoba Historical Society and the Jewish Heritage Center. It wasn't really very much of one. One of the interesting features was in the 1930s, it served as a training ground for Winnipeg Jews to learn how to farm with the intent of going to Palestine, that is to go to Eretz Yisrael. So that was an unusual feature of it, that it was a kind of a training school.
Yeah, I also read that some of the colonies were managed by the Jewish Colonization Association, and we talked about the generosity of the Jewish Colonization Association, but I also read that they were very difficult to deal with. And there were colonists from Argentina who wrote to the Jewish Colonization Association and said, well, in the wintertime, our farming chores are light. So can we please focus our resources on making clothes? And the answer came back from the Jewish Colonization Association is no. So they wanted Jews to be farmers, to work the land. Maurice de Hirsch, he had this idea that Jews, they have to get out of being moneylenders or, in the Shmata trade, they have to go back to doing something so dignified as to be farmers. And then they were not easy to deal with as a philanthropic organization. That's one of the things I read.
Rudy Cowan, who was at the top of my screen, writes in and asks, can I mention something about the word colony? Please unmute your computer and let's hear what you have to say.
Thank you. Part of this is about the word colony, because we tend to think of Hutterite colonies and colonies being cooperative farming ventures, like a kibbutz or something like that. Whereas this, in Western Canada, it was called a colony, but it really wasn't. They were independent homesteads. Every family had to take out their own homestead papers and farm independently. And sometimes they were next to another Jewish family, and sometimes they were not. And so the point you're making about the fact that they were spread out, that there were great distances, and even getting to the synagogue or getting food, when meat was shipped out from Winnipeg, in many cases, it would be shipped to the nearest train station, and then one of the homesteading families would pack up everybody's meat and drop them off. Well, if you're doing that at 32 degrees Celsius in the middle of the summer, whoever gets the meat last is going to have a problem. So it was the drought, the distances, the heat, the cold, the difficulties, and by 1924, more than half of the farming areas of southeastern Alberta and southwestern Saskatchewan were already abandoned. Now, that's not just Jewish. That, as you say, that's everybody. It was really difficult by the middle 20s. And one of the Jewish Colonization Association reports that I read from 1922 was giving the report of one of the homesteaders. And it had the husband, the name, the age, the wife, the name, the age, the children, the number of cows, 2, the number of horses, 1. And then at the bottom, it said, no crop again this year. And every time I say that, the hair on my arm stands up. How did they survive with no crop? Anyway, that's.
Dan, do you mind if I just chime in for a second?
Please.
Mark, Irena, I just want to commend you. I thought that was a fabulous presentation. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you very much.
I'm breaching protocol. Dan might slap my hand virtually, I'm not sure, by asking questions to you directly rather than on the chat line, but I'll take that risk.
Please.
I'm curious, the tour that you gave us of the interior of the building, would that have been an accurate reflection of how it did look back in at the time?
Yes.
Yes. Well, we have Trudy Cowan, who was our vice president and who headed up everything to do with the building move and the interior of the restoration. So really, she's the person to answer that question.
Okay.
We have the information both from oral histories. As Irena said, they said that the men sat in the middle, the women sat at the side. We could see that the building actually spoke to us. We could see where the stove was on the floor because we could see the burn marks from the ashes when they took out the remnants of the fire. We could see the remnants around the upper rim of the walls of the hand painting that was there. And that was redone by hand from photographs and drawings of what was left of the original. So we could see where they had put lamps, attached lamps to the walls. We could see where, obviously, where the windows were and how big they were. So yes, the interior layout is what it would have been, or as close as it is at all possible to make it.
That's interesting. And so the bima as well, were there some markings that?
Not that, but I believe that in one of the oral histories, they described something about the bima being in the middle.
And I'm sorry, Dan, I just one more. I have many questions, but I'll just ask one more. Given that the original, the creators of the synagogue, of the institution, they were likely Orthodox, and were there ever any discussions of a mikvah to be built? No.
No.
Thank you.
No.
There was a rabbi's house on the nearby,
Okay.
and there were 3 rabbis that served in the 12 years that the synagogue was active, or that the colony was using the synagogue, but we did not find any oral history that there was a mikvah. Actually, that was one of the things I believe that I included in my original proposal, is to include a mikvah, but there wasn't one that was found, so we did not include anything like that.
And the mikvah would have had to be running water, and there's no running water out there. There is not a tree, not a stream, not an anything. We've been out to the location where this building was constructed originally, and there is still not a tree, not a stream, not an anything out there. This is very dry prairie.
I'm sorry, one more thing. You mentioned a number of, festivities that are being held there while it's at the Heritage Park. Are there services ever done there?
No.
No.
Oh,
Okay.
occasionally for specific purposes, but not regular.
Okay, not regular, but I thought maybe there might be a once in a while maybe a like a Seder or maybe a Saturday morning service once in a while. No.
Mark, it's not really possible.
Okay.
Well, we don't allow food in the synagogue. We have had bar mitzvahs.
Oh. And
in fact, we just had a bar mitzvah. They are on this call. Micah Libben's son had his bar mitzvah there just a little over a month ago. We've had bar mitzvahs there. We've had weddings there, but no eating of food.
Okay.
As I mentioned, the challahs are rubber.
But it's nice that there's services.
Can I make a comment?
Absolutely. Micah Libben.
Great presentation. You guys did such a nice job for Calgary and the Jewish community, bringing that synagogue to Calgary. We don't have very many synagogues in Calgary, so it's really amazing to have a new old synagogue, not that new now. It's already been there for however many years. But I had personally, I've had 2 of the most meaningful Jewish experiences there. One was when they opened the Little Synagogue, and you talked about it, but it was really, it's hard to explain how moving it is to be in a Jewish ceremony that's religious and isn't one of the pieces that happens regularly in the calendar. This was in Rosh Hashanah, and this isn't remembering something that happened to someplace somewhere else. This was an Alberta Jewish religious experience with all the rabbis and the Torah, and it was really something. The whole community came out. And then a month ago, we had my son's bar mitzvah there. And the Little Synagogue is the perfect place to have a little Jewish ceremony. If you can't invite more than 10 people, it's perfect. If you can't invite more than 10 people, there's ways to do it too. They've had big, beautiful bar mitzvahs and ceremonies there. And I hope to go to a bigger one when it's allowed.
But it can hold more than 10 people. It can. It has a bigger capacity prior to before COVID and hopefully after COVID. It has a capacity, I think, of 54 people.
Yeah.
So you can have more people, and we're waiting for this thing to pass.
Oh, and there's ways to do it. Heritage Park has so many good venues. You could have hundreds of people and do a beautiful ceremony there. Well, that's our hope for the next one.
That's right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Micah. That was great.
That'll be great.
I was just going to say too that we,
Irena, that wonderful white gown and hat that you display in the pictures, is that vintage also?
No, it wasn't. That was me. I did mention that it also took me 3 months to decide on my outfit and write my speech. The outfit was was it's a brand new dress, and the hat was, it was $400, and I just kept going back to the store and looking at it and looking at it, and finally a friend said, Irena, this is one of your greatest accomplishments, one of the greatest days of your life. Buy the $400 hat. So I did. Yeah. I've worn the outfit again a number of times. I am hoping that when an occasion presents itself again to wear that outfit, I will still fit into the dress.
Was there any damage to the synagogue in moving?
No, no.
No.
No, it was, I went in, when Manny found the synagogue, we drove out there one time, him and I, and we went into the basement and I looked at the wood. I mean, not that I'm an expert of moving buildings, but the wood, it was dry and it was like it was brand new.
Are there any more questions? I don't want to, like Mark, we could ask all day, but it's probably not a good idea.
Is there a basement in the new foundation?
Yes.
Canvassed any of the original families for artifacts?
Then I think I will wind this up with this very successful program with many, many thanks to Irena. And it's such an impressive project, as Micah said. It's such a contribution to Calgary and to Canadian Jewish life in general. And thank you, Bob, for recognizing it, and for the Calgary Heritage Park for being open-minded and imaginative, and making this possible for the community. Farm colonies aren't really as well known as they should be. From Winnipeg, where we have people who lived on farm colonies, mostly in Saskatchewan, and moved to Winnipeg afterwards, the people who lived there and their descendants are very, very proud of it. But the rest of the community, probably not so much. So you're bringing the farm colonies to Calgary helps, I think, to accomplish what we've not done maybe all that well. And of course, demystifying Judaism for the general public is always a great service, especially these days. I understand that there are a lot of Jewish Calgarians and other Alberta Jews who have their roots in Winnipeg. I'd like to bring to your attention that the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada has very fine genealogical services. We have complete records of every burial from Thunder Bay to eastern Saskatchewan and perhaps even beyond, and pictures of almost all tombstones. That's allowed us to record numerous names and dates, and sometimes often have the names of relatives in it. So if you're having trouble working on your genealogy, please contact us for help. We have archival resources as well, and we're having a major archival modernization progress. We would certainly appreciate contributions to keep that work going, and also for the archival modernization program. Our next program is a virtual one too, and it's remarkably timely. A very important part of our fundraising for many years now, for a dozen years, has been the lecture that has been created in the name of Saul Caney and his wife. He was a very important Saskatchewan and Winnipeg businessman and philanthropist. This year in COVID, we have a virtual series with no charge. On June 6th, noon, Winnipeg time, 11 a.m. Calgary, Ephraim Halevi, former head of the Mossad, among other achievements, instrumental in negotiating the peace treaty with Jordan, will be speaking on the future of Israel and the Middle East. That was an important topic when it was booked 2 years ago. And of course, with everything that's going on now, It's absolutely vital. So please check the jhcwc.org website or simply write to us and register for this this important talk with no charge. Thank you once again, Bill, who did the technical work, everybody else who worked on it, Bob for his insightful comments, and Irena for that wonderful presentation. And thanks and goodbye for now. Hope to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you to the Jewish Heritage Center for putting this on. So grateful for this opportunity to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye for now.